Welcome to our exploring of the future of school facilities. I'm Josh Johnson, proud superintendent of Valley City Public Schools. It's my honor tonight to share some information with you about the future of our school facilities. We've designed and set up the presentation tonight as an opportunity to share information with you, and as important is to give you the opportunity to be able to ask questions, as well as to look at some of the displays of information that we have out in the hallway as well. And so at the end of the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for questions and comment, as well as encouraging you, if you didn't come early and take advantage of walking around our school, that you would also feel free and welcome to go on tours afterwards or catch individuals that would be outside. One of the challenges that we ran into on Monday night when we were going through the facilities plan and sharing some information we'll get to here in a moment about the roofing, and people said there's nothing wrong with your roof, and we said, gosh, I wish it was raining to be able to highlight some of the leak and the issues we have. So if you did go on the tour, you were able to see some of the leaks and the issues that we're having. The timing of it really worked quite well for us. So welcome again tonight, and we're happy that you're here. We've had a great response, and there's a lot of interest, and I think that speaks a lot relative to our community here in Valley City. Of course, I think this is near and dear to everybody's heart, and the education facility, in a lot of ways, is the heartbeat of your community. And so as we get started, I'd like to introduce our school board members. President Ryan Mathias, Vice President Natalie Winch, Board Member Darren Anderson, Board Member Sherry Horsager, and our newest board member, Phil Hatcher. So 5 board members will be here during the presentation as well as being available afterwards. If you have questions specifically for any of them, make sure you catch them afterwards. Back in August, when we had a school board retreat and we started talking about grant money and how we were going to use some of these dollars to address facility needs, the school board said, we want to take a deeper look into the facilities and engage our community and get feedback before we make somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction and plug these monies into the facilities. And so at that time, we said we really need to get some input from across the school district. And so we assembled a steering committee. And so we have steering committee members that are here as well, representing our teachers and administrators from across the school district. Nicole Powers from Jefferson Elementary, Kathy Lenz from Washington, Chad Leak representing our elementary administration, Sarah Leeroot from the secondary, Christy Brandt, our secondary high school, Buff Murray, secondary. Jordan Heck is our new facilities director, who's been doing an absolutely fantastic job in taking on this position in the last 6 months. Brian Krewall is our technology director, Tom Van Orney, a business manager. Derek Bope is here. He's our career and tech director and will speak in a short while relative to career and tech education, and Ryan Mathias and myself. This group has met 3 times already in the last 6 weeks and has really started to dive into what we're referred to as an exploration. There's really 2 themes that we're going to share with you guys tonight, and I really would like these 2 to resonate as you think in terms of the conversation about exploring the future of our school facilities. Why now? We're really taking a look at why is now an important time for us to take a look at school facilities. Why not 5 years ago? Why not 5 years from now? And so we'll dive into each of those specifically and identify 3 reasons why we believe why now is important to our school district. And then what if? What if is an opportunity for us all to dream and to think a little bit outside of the box, to think about what our school district could be with some decisions and thought put into from a school district and a community of Valley City. So let's jump in and we'll start with why now. We've identified 3 reasons in the school district why we believe now is an important time for us as a school district to address school facilities. The first is facilities assessment. In a short while, we'll reference and highlight the ages of our school facilities, and we believe that there's some significant areas that need to be addressed in our school facilities, and that was completed as part of an assessment of those facilities. Cost savings. When we start looking at consolidation of our schools, we can address some areas of future cost savings. And then last is state and federal grants. And as far as why now, that's the one that definitely pushes us to the front. Over the last 2 years, because of COVID-19, the school district has been the recipient of a lot of federal dollars. The first round of federal dollars that were shared with us in Valley City Public Schools, $1 million approximately, were given to address COVID-specific health-related items such as touchless faucets, bathrooms, hand sanitizer. It's what we used to get our students back into school after we were gone in the spring of 2020. We've subsequently, and Mr. Van Orny, our business manager, will share in a little bit, received additional dollars. There's a sunset on those dollars. So a couple of comments and questions we've had is, let's take a step back and take some more time to consider our options. We really are not afforded that opportunity in the situation without risking losing out on some grant dollars. And so part of the 3 reasons is our state and federal grants and the timelines that were given in terms of being able to allocate those resources. The original ages of our school facilities. So we have several school facilities across our district. Valley City High School is our oldest building, 1919. All the way up to the Highlander Activity Center, which was constructed in 2004. The average age in 2021 of our facilities is 1958, 63 years old. If we actually broke that down by square footage, that number would get older, considering the fact that our junior senior high covers the largest square footage or footprint in our school district, 180,000 square feet, by comparison of Jefferson, Washington, which is 30,000 square feet. So you get the idea that the age of our facilities are definitely showing a little bit of their wear and tear. Mr. Bauer, I don't know if you knew this fast fact or not. Top 10 oldest schools in North Dakota. Valley City High School, 1919, ranks right now as the 5th oldest school in North Dakota, according to the survey that we conducted this fall. Do we have anyone here from Bow Bells, Fort Ransom, Grand Forks, or Drake? We have 26 students, I understand, attending school down in Fort Ransom. Central High School in Grand Forks had the flood of 1997 and therefore took a lot of grant federal resources and plugged that into updating their school. I believe part of the reason why they're still operating in that school. Drake and Bow Bells, I know right now with the grants that are coming in, are also looking at updating their facilities. I'm not sure really what it is, but I noticed that number 10 in Oaks, the school I was at before coming to Valley City. Before that, I was in Devils Lake at Central Middle School in 1937. Marshall informed me that when I was up in Wimbledon, that was the early 20s. So maybe there's just a general theme that follows me, that I'm drawn to older facilities. So here we jump back in, and let's get into the specifics regarding facilities assessment. So we first completed a facility assessment in 2017. School board at the time said, we really want to pull out what are our specific needs across the school district as it relates relative to our facilities. We updated that in this fall with the help of our construction consultants, JLG Architects, to be able to reflect 2 things. And I really want to emphasize and point out 2 important pieces of this, as we'll get to here in a moment. One is the change in the economy. There's been a lot of change in the last 2 years relative to the cost of lumber, the cost of metal, just simply the cost of materials. So you'll see in a moment again the changes that are reflecting with our assessment plan. The second thing that this will reflect is modernization. Modernization, when we conducted this assessment in 2017, did not include updating our facilities to a standard quality of education. So certain specific things such as lighting, flooring, classroom doors were not included in the study at that time. Identified in our current study, we have major building systems either needing replacement or repair. Mechanically, heating, cooling, and ventilation. Again, this is across the district. However, we do highlight that the majority of our facility needs, more than half, are specifically focused on the junior senior high where we have the majority of our square footage. Electrical and plumbing, roofing, asbestos, windows, door replacement, and flooring. Mark Swanberg, I talked to him the other day, a contractor here in Valley City, and he said, I was involved in putting the mechanical system in 71. I didn't like it then, and I don't think I like it anymore. It needs to be replaced and be gone. You know, Mark, sounds a little bit like him. We have plumbing issues in our school. In January of 2018, we had what we refer to as the Great Flood. A urinal actually blew out from the wall, and the water, as Jordan Heck came in, at 6 in the morning after the water was running for 4 hours, January, if I didn't mention earlier, the water's flowing out onto Central Avenue. And so we spent a couple days cleaning up and taking things from the library. Fortunately, the books weren't damaged, but there was nothing that we could do to recognize that those issues existed because they were behind the wall. I want to make sure and point out as well that at the time, Rick Anderson was our facilities director and was for 18 years. Anything that I say and represent or speak to is by no means representing anything that the previous boards or facility directors in our school district did not do. I think when we had our original facility assessment in 2017, there was a lot of comments and praises for what our school actually has done in helping to maintain a 1919 facility. A couple other additions to get through. Safety and security updates. We met with students last week and they said it is ridiculous that when we have students on crutches or wheelchairs that the most accessible, easy way for them to be able to go from the senior high office to the cafeteria is outside. That's not a standard of education that we should be expecting in Valley City Public Schools. What do you do? And it may work in the fall or the spring time of the year, but in the winter time when we have snow on the ground or it's freezing cold, the issue we have is our elevators, our lifts are not reliable. And so I am to a degree, when I was listening to the students, take responsibility in the fact that we haven't prioritized updating those. Fire code, anytime you renovate or update a building, fire code has to go along with that. And right now we don't have sprinkler systems, simply again because of the ages and we're grandfathered in. Access and control and visitor management. When our schools were constructed in the 20s, 50s, 60s, 70s, safety and security is not what it was today. It wasn't a priority. In fact, the location of offices at that time were centralized. Jefferson Elementary, Washington Elementary, our junior senior high, we were going through a tour just now, and an individual represented that the principal is up on the second floor. I think we can all recognize and agree that world has changed just a little bit when these schools were originally constructed. We want to know who's coming in and out of our buildings. We don't want to trust that when we let somebody in that they're going to get from point A to point B after walking through and by our students. And again, I'm not referencing necessarily the individual who comes walking in with a gun, but we do have custody issues and people that maybe don't have the best of intentions in schools today. So part of our plan is to look at upgrading our offices to make sure that they're more secure. Classroom and learning spaces. I think one of the challenges that we struggle in identifying is what is modernizing classrooms and learning spaces. Our science labs has some challenges. When they were constructed and designed in 1919, even throughout the renovations, the updates that were made are not necessarily up to the standard of what our expectations are for education in 2021. We're outdated. When we met with the students, they talked about the lighting and how dark and dingy it can be. I believe architecturally in the 1980s, they thought it was a good idea to improve efficiencies of your building to decrease natural sunlight. Not that we're putting any knocks on architects by any means, Lee, here. Thank you. So there's just some standards that, again, across the district that would go a long way in modernizing. Shared spaces, currently limiting elementary classes and activity, both at Washington and Jefferson. Our cafeteria/gymnasiums are used basically 98% of the day. transitioning from breakfast to Phi Ed classes, back to lunch, back to Phi Ed classes. Mr. Suffolk referenced that they do as best as they can in the short amount of time to clean the floor. However, there's still food occasionally left on the floor when kids come into the Phi Ed classes. And if you know kindergartners, first and second graders, coming home with stains of food on your pants is not necessarily the best thing. So can we create some additional spaces that lighten our schedule and allow us to be able to increase physical activity in our schools? Technology has changed just a little bit from when our schools were designed, and so we have a lot of raceways that are built on top of the walls. Again, we like to brag in our school district that we have, I believe, one of the best technology plans across the state. We do the best that we absolutely can with what we have available, but there are challenges that exist relative to that as well. So collectively, as we add the numbers up together, we do have some significant facility needs in our school district. Pointing out modernization of our school facilities, because I think sometimes we struggle in terms of relating relative to that. Anyone recognize the school, first of all? Ritchie 1. Anyone go to school in Ritchie 1? Maybe somebody doesn't want to raise their hand. I don't blame you. That's okay. We'll get to that in a little bit. Up on the top here it says, having outlived its usefulness and replaced by modernization, Ritchie School number 1 is being dismantled brick by brick and memory by memory. And I'm going to point out, outlived its usefulness after 59 years. In 1966, the founders of our community, the educational leaders, community leaders, recognized that after 59 years, Ritchie 1 had outlived its usefulness. I guess my question, I think we've gotten a good bang for the buck out of this facility. And have we reached that point in our school district where we're considering whether or not we've extended and reached out beyond the usefulness of our school facilities? We'll get back to Ritchie 1 here in a minute. Who was Tom Ritchie, by the way, a side trivia? Anyone? Tom Ritchie was a baker that lived across the street that had influences within the school district. At the time, George Hanna was the longtime superintendent. Let's take just a quick trip through. This was the heating unit that we like to reference that Mark Swanberg was swearing at. Our plumbing issues, some of the original piping that is exposed down in the lower level of the high school. This is the reference to the Great Flood that our librarian, Mrs. Leerud, would speak relative to. We removed all the furniture and had services come in to clean up the water. So when we reference the issues relative to roofing, this is a picture of the junior senior high school and the Highlander Activity Center. This is the Highlander Activity Center, this is the lobby, this is the cafeteria, this is the South Gym, this is the wrestling room. This is the original 1919 school. This would be the addition of the 50s. This is the North Gym. The challenge we run into from a roofing standpoint is where do you start? How do you address all the overlaps, the aligned of the roofs? And so today is a good example. We have more than 10 leaks, not only in this facility, but across the school district because we have roofing needs. And again, we've addressed and we've continued to update those, but when you're looking at an entire block worth of roofing, it's a significant cost to the school district. So here's just another picture of our roofs. So Washington Elementary, part of the interior design was putting asbestos tile on the walls back in the 50s. And so you can see it's cracking. And when you have cracking asbestos, it leads to other issues and will eventually need to be removed. Jordan Heck, our facilities director, is trained and will recommend and advise us in terms of what we needed to do to make sure that, again, we don't have health effects and issues in our schools. Jefferson Elementary, as part of the cafeteria pod, has some of the existing windows. So we'll reference those in a little bit. And then just by comparisons, a show of a facility that is in our school district that we're extremely proud of, which is the Highlander Activity Center. The entrance, built in 2004. Over this last summer, we spent some time updating this facility again to represent our school district and Highlander pride. You can see the differences of modernization from the lighting to ceiling to flooring and the natural light that comes in. So here's where we get to where the rubber meets the road. Our facilities assessment based on two things, based on our economy, the cost and the increases over the last 2 years, and the modernization of our facility, taking a more thorough look at our assessments, has jumped from 2017 $11.3 million to $26 million. In the last couple of days, we've had questions in terms of authenticity of our facilities plan. So let's throw that out there and just say, let's say we're off by 20%. I think it's a fair number. 20% still leaves us with $20 million of facility needs in our school district. But what if we're off 20% the other way and we have over $30 million of facility needs in our school district? Again, I'm not here and I don't want to go into debating whether or not our kids need air conditioning, whether or not we need elevators in our school to be able to provide adequate ADA or fire code or everything else. But I think there is a quality of education that we need to expect and to live by in our school district. And as part of that, there's some decisions that the board has asked us to explore, and part of that is, again, addressing these needs as far as facilities go. Outside in the hallway, each of the schools is broken out as far as facility needs, and so I encourage you afterwards to take a peek and look at those. Over the last 20 years, we've taken a look at our general fund and building fund and pulled out $5.09 million is what the district has allocated for facility needs over the last 20 years. Apply that to our current facility needs, and you can see that our general fund and building fund currently, right now, with what we're levying, there's no way that we'll be able to keep up and address what's necessary in our school district without adding to the deferred maintenance that we already have. Again, I want to reference and speak to that this is not a slight against any previous board or directors, and that the district has been doing and the best that they absolutely can to address these needs. It becomes increasingly costly when you have aging facilities in your school district. Second thing, future cost savings. So we've taken a look and looked at what would an annual operation cost savings look like if we were to consolidate schools in our district and create a new K12 campus. What would those cost savings look like on an annual basis and then spread out over 20 years? There's really three key areas that we have identified. The first one being energy. We do not currently have efficient systems with our heating, ventilation systems, our insulation, our windows. And so as part of that, we've identified about $150,000 each year. When we met with the students last week, they said, you know, Mr. Johnson, it's dark, it's a little bit dreary in the classrooms. They have this new technology out there, it's called LED lights. It's supposed to make the room shine a little bit brighter. Have you heard of this? And all of a sudden, I dated myself just a little bit. Jefferson teachers, we met with them last week, and they said, do you know, Mr. Johnson, that we have special features in our classrooms that we haven't really told anybody, but it's kind of one of our secrets. We can actually take water and pop, and we can put them into our cabinet on the exterior wall, and they'll stay cold because in the wintertime, that's the type of loss of energy that we have in this area. And so I don't think we're exaggerating that by any means, JJ, as I look at JJ in the back. So a couple of examples. Maintenance. Again, maintaining the facilities requires annual investments. And when we look at multiple facilities, repair and replacement, contracted services, equipment, and supplies, we're estimating $350,000. The big one for us is human resources and services. Staffing, and again, to highlight, to point out, when we refer to staffing, we're talking about our administration, teaching, and support staff at all levels across the school district. Operating 7 school facilities with a population of approximately 1,050 students comes with a cost. And so part of the exploration is the cost savings, specifically when you look at staffing. Right now, by example, we have 4 principals in our school district in grades K through 12. If we would consolidate buildings, can we move the number of administrators from 4 principals to 3 principals? Can we combine and stop duplicating of programs and services involving our teachers and have savings with our certified teaching staff? Our support staff, whether you're talking about kitchen, custodial, library, support services. Again, because we're operating in multiple facilities, we have staff that serve in similar positions. And so estimated together, what we're saying is 1.5 million from energy, maintenance, and staffing is what we estimate could be saved. And again, just to reiterate, 1.5 million annually, taking over a 20-year period is $30 million. This is funds that right now the district is expending from our general and our building fund. The third reason for why now that we want to highlight is state and federal grants. The district, as we've referenced over the last couple of years because of COVID-19, the pandemic, is eligible for state and federal grant funds. Again, these funds are eligible to be used for facility purposes. They're one-time funds with an ending date on those. We really have 2 sources of funding. One is from the state level, the second is from the federal level. And I've asked Mr. Derek Bope, our Cheyenne Valley Area Career and Tech Center Director, to come up and share a little bit more specific and background relative to a state CTE grant. So Derek, if you don't mind, come on up and I'll have you speak to and reference our state CTE grant.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Test. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. As he mentioned, about a year ago today, actually, we were starting to hear from our state legislature that they were looking at taking some of the COVID dollars and designated them for new creation as well as expansion of career and tech centers. So truly an unprecedented time. We knew our governor was very on board with expanding career and tech education, and these federal funds gave them the opportunity to really expand upon the career and tech centers and get more to come online. For example, Fargo has been operating a virtual tech center. They would really like to duplicate what we have been able to do for the last 45 years in the Valley City area by having a consolidated physical location where they're able to bring students in and teach them about the trade skills. So the way that this grant works is they are willing to grant $500,000 up to $10 million in matching grant funds. And I say matching grant, we have to be able to raise whatever we are asking the state to contribute. So if we're looking at a $5 million build, we would have to be able to raise $2.5 million locally. So we started hearing these numbers and how do we best utilize that funding that might be coming down the pike. So we talked to local economic development committees, we talked to our local administration in all of the member schools we served, and what kind of percolated to the top was the idea of this academy pathway. And what that looks like is a certain percentage of students know early on that they want to graduate high school and go right into the workforce. And I think, if I'm misquoting, but Miss Jennifer Feist commented that there's approximately 200 to 250 jobs available in the Valley City, Barnes County area that require little more than the education we can provide in our high schools and our career and tech center. So if we can have kids be job ready coming out, that was our goal. So this academy pathway, we would look to take kids into our career and tech center and provide them an extended learning day on whatever particular program they're interested in, automotive, healthcare, and then tailor their math, science, and English to pertain to that career field. So an automotive-related math or a construction-related math, science, English. Does that make sense? So in order to support that, we would need to expand upon the classroom space that we have available at the Career and Tech Center. So our board did approve, and we did start looking into how do we renovate and add on to our current Career and Tech Center to be able to accommodate that. And that's when Mr. Johnson and their board had their retreat and said, pump the brakes a minute, maybe we can do something together and create some efficiencies between our two buildings and be able to support that even more. For example, some of the efficiencies he mentioned in staffing, we duplicate some things, and actually if you are able to offer a career and tech ed class through a center, the funding increases from the state. So part of that, the potential savings, is if we can pull those teachers in FACS and tech ed into a career and tech center, not only are we able to offer those to the rest of our member schools, but we actually save on the funding side of things from the state. Another example of efficiencies is it takes us 5 minutes down and 5 minutes back at minimum, that's with good weather conditions, between each 45-minute period. So we end up losing that 12 to 15 minutes, depending on what stoplights you hit in between, out of education every day. So if we can put those 15 minutes back into those 6 periods that we have classes, that's a lot more education we can provide our students for the same dollar amount. So that's kind of the background of where, and I want to mention the deadline. So the deadline to apply for this grant is December 1st. So that's what's creating some of this expedited exploration and what is the most efficient way to use those dollars without having to ask taxpayers for those. So if we can leverage that 10 million to help pull that off, that ends up saving us all. So.
Excuse me, this is again a really unprecedented time for us. Never before in education can we remember back where $10 million is potentially available from the state to be able to match a project or match some investment of resources at a local level. Along with Derek, representing the Cheyenne Valley Area Career and Tech Board is Mike Schwer from Barnes County North. Ryan Mathias and Darren Anderson are also on the Career and Tech Board. I'd like to give a shout out to Jennifer Feist. Jennifer has been helping to orchestrate our advisory committee, relative to career and tech education and really focus and trying to bring to the forefront the conversation about preparing students for career after high school and what does that look like, as well as being able to have the conversation about adult education in our community. Don't tell my wife, but I snuck out to Burger King today at lunch, and as much as I'd like to believe that Burger King decided to close their doors at 5 o'clock today to allow their people to come to this presentation, I think the sad reality of it is that they, like a lot of other businesses in Valley City right now, are unable to find helpers. Saturday, another example, went and tried to pick up some donuts, and bakery was closed because they couldn't find help. Saturday night, went to Subway to pick up a sandwich, and Subway was closed because they couldn't find help. Again, in our country, we're finding unprecedented times where the workforce is not there like what it was in the past. And so, again, back to Mr. Bope's point, I think career and tech education is more important than it ever has been in the past. And if we can potentially look at consolidating some programs and being able to provide those experiences for our students, I think it's only, again, going to be a win-win for our kids and our community. I'll ask Mr. Tom Van Orney, our business manager, to come forward. We like to refer to Tom these days as Thomas Grant Van Orney. Tom has been a business manager for a few years, maybe over 40. And during his time, I don't know collectively over a 4-year period, Tom, if you've managed as many grants and dollars as you have in the last 18 months.
Not even close. Jan, not even close. Not even close. The Federal American Relief Act grants started with COVID. We had the SO1, which Mr. Johnson referred to earlier. We spent on staffing and replacing touchless features within our building. That was spent last year, done on June 30th of 2021. Then on September 29, we were approved for what's called, those were SO1. We got approved for SO2 and SO3. The total grant is about $3.8 million. We have to spend, by federal law, $800,000 of it on learning loss, which is where we would add on staff to help students who struggled in keeping up academically during the pandemic. And so we're hiring staff, we're buying curriculum, we're buying programs to address that. And that's mandated by federal law. So we have $3 million left that we can do with. And we'd like to think one of the options for us is to use it in a major building project of some kind. whether that be a remodel or a new build, but use those monies to improve our facilities, which is one of the things that they're allowing those monies to be used for. So we're looking at how we want to spend those. And there's deadlines on them of 2020, June 30th of 2023 and June 30th of 2024. So we're under those deadlines, same as with the state career and tech ed grants that are under deadlines. So that's the impetus of why it may seem like we're shoving this, but the monies are here at this point. So there's just one other thing I want to piggyback off what Mr. Johnson was saying earlier, and we met with the high school kids, maybe a week ago. One of the things they said, it was interesting, and we didn't prompt this, their biggest concern, and this speaks to our kids here at Valley City, their biggest concern in the high school was ADA compliant. Was themselves and more, it was their friends that end up getting stuck in the elevator or can't get from point A to point B in a timely fashion between classes because of the steps and just not having those ADA compliant features here. I mean, I think Mr. Johnson and I were both very surprised at that. The other thing they said, which was interesting, they said, we love Valley City High School. We're proud of it. We're proud of Valley City High School. But we're not necessarily proud of our building. So.
Thank you, Tom. Tom really sticks me to a timeline. Being a numbers guy, told me that we had to get in and out of here in 60 minutes, and so I'd like to believe that I'm given an extra 5 minutes based on his sharing of the federal grants programs. All right, we had 3 reasons. Why now? We talked about facilities assessment, we talked about cost savings, and we talked about grants. That's really pushed us again into exploring the future of school facilities. So hold on, we're going to share now about what if. What if we use the grant funds? What if we use cost savings to help consolidate, to help explore, to help look, to collect feedback, to determine whether or not the school district should look at a new 412 school, potentially renovating K3. And I think based on the feedback that we had since Monday's presentation is the potential of a K12 school. And so as part of that, we've taken a look at all of our school facilities. We have currently 7 facilities that we're operating: the junior senior high, the Highlander Activity Center, district office, Washington, the Career and Tech Center, Jefferson, and Hannah Field. So what if we took those 7 facilities and consolidated those to 3? Again, applying the cost savings on a $1.5 million annually, combining that over a 30-year period, saving the district $30 million, 20 years over $30 million. That left us with then Jefferson Elementary, the Highlander Activity Center, and Hannah Field, along with a new 412 school. So that's a conversation that at this point, over the last 6 weeks that the exploration has led us. I think what's fascinating about the organic nature of this conversation as a community, in the last 2 days, the response has been, have you guys thought about a K-12? That's gone further, and people have said, have you thought about specific locations? And again, I want to make sure I accurately represent the position of the board in saying that this is truly an exploration. Encouraging and emphasizing the feedback from the stakeholders and residents of Valley City. So we've taken a look and had conversations with Park and Rec and said, what if? What if we constructed a new 412 facility in the area, the location of the 4 softball fields up at Highline Park? So this area would be directly to the east of Hannah Field. As Mr. Bope had referenced, that would include consolidating and adding the Career and Tech Center along with that. Along with this idea is to be able to renovate and make necessary changes, such as adding a gymnasium and secured entrance for Jefferson Elementary. And I think part of the intrigue relative to a K-12 campus is the proximity to a lot of other facilities such as Charlie Brown, Hannah Field, which includes our updated track, our new track, the YSC, our tennis courts. Concept is to create a combined campus, to be able to have accessibility and programs that are available for our students. And we'll get back to that here in a moment. So again, to highlight and to look specifically, these are concepts. These are preliminary designs. And so at this time, we're sharing this information. It's out on the poster boards out front as well. We've presented this to our staff a few times and look for feedback. What would it look like if we had a gymnasium off of the cafeteria that would not only be accessible for our students during the day, but could also be accessible and used outside of the school day? A secured entrance coming off of the new parking lot to make sure that parents had easy entrance and access to the school, yet we made sure that we were checking everybody at the door. We've talked about additions with some additional learning spaces, as well as being able to address the mechanical systems which currently exist in each of the pods, removing those, updating the HVAC and the ventilation systems in Jefferson Elementary. So this is one of the concepts and the ideas that has been discussed at this point, and we want to make sure, again, this information is being presented out to our community so that you all have an opportunity to be able to look at it, take a chance to think over, and provide comment and feedback as well. As far as a 412 facility, what we're taking a look at is being able to incorporate as many students as possible under one roof. And so part of the concept that has come even again in the last couple of days is the ability to be able to even add a K3 onto this as well, whether that be right now or whether that be something that would happen down in the future. But we would make sure that there would be enough space for physical activity. Right now, in grades 4 through 12, we have one gymnasium at Washington. We have two gymnasiums that are used for Phi Ed right now at the junior senior high school. That's the North Gym and the South Gym. The Highlander Activity Center is not used for physical education very often during the school day. So three gym gymnasium, auditorium, performing arts center with 4th grade, 5th grade on the 2nd floor, a middle school, which traditionally in school districts consists of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, high school, 3rd floor, and career tech education. One of the things that we've talked about is, would it be feasible to take a look at the lime pit, the wastewater treatment area? There's some issues with soils over in that area, and so we'd have to be able to study and address that, but is there an opportunity to be able to potentially decrease costs by putting career and tech education over across the street, place for automotive or construction classes? And so that's part of, again, the conversations we're having. We've had questions in terms of parking. Interestingly enough, when we presented to the students last week, they did not reference parking as being an issue. I don't know if they were off, they're not feeling well that day, or what the issue was, but again, as Tom referenced, they addressed ADA more than they ever talked about parking. For those of you that drive up and down Central Avenue at about 3:15 to 3:30, it's kind of like the game of Frogger, going back over across the street. So we want to make sure that if there is going to be a new site or new facility, that there's adequate parking. Total, maybe not even including the 100 spots that are over in the far eastern part of this, which is a significant slope. If you just add up these spaces, it's approximately 300 spots. I tell you, that's probably about 298 more spots than what we currently have right now at the high school. And I think plenty adequate for potential parking in this area. By comparison, Hannah Field has 172 parking spots in the new parking lot that's been added. So you can kind of give the context of size and comparison. We're really specific and want to point out and highlight that these are concepts. By no means have these gone through any sort of formal review. In fact, the architects would tell us that if things would continue to proceed and they would keep going on in conversation, the likelihood of these changing 50 times is quite high. So if you notice some things that stand out, again, there are more placeholders right now based on what our usage is for the school district. Somebody asked me, where's the school store going to be? I like to highlight right here. And then the next person that comes along and says, well, where's that music room going to be? That's right there. you get the idea. We're right now placing areas in terms of square footage and where we need, not necessarily specifically addressing where those areas are going to be as far as a school building, if again this project moves forward. So this is the part where we're supposed to tell you to sit down before we give you this information. When the architects had shared these what the costs were going to be, it was one of those kind of like swallow, like really that's what construction costs are these days. $55 to $65 million, again based on estimated square footage cost. We're looking at 200,000 square feet for a 412 building. If you look to expand that for a K3 building, believing that there's enough space up in this area, you can do the math and figure out the amount of space that's necessary, 35,000 some square feet right now up at Jefferson Elementary. So you're somewhere in the ballpark about $250,000 if you're going to add on to that. What we're taking a look at is trying to understand differentiating between a couple things. And one is cost of construction, which we know right now the cost of construction is relatively high. Materials are expensive. Will they come down? Will they not come down? And will the cost of construction and materials continue to increase? We're looking at cost comparisons right now. Mandan recently passed a bond referendum, and so they have a more accurate idea in terms of what the cost of construction is going to look like. So having that conversation as well as the type of construction. And it's something as part of an education you're learning throughout this process that there are different types of construction that elevate from cost to one tier to another. And so this is a picture of Cheyenne High School. How many of you have been to Cheyenne High School? I think a very beautiful facility, but did you know that Cheyenne High School actually by comparisons to Alexandria High School is not of the same type of construction? And Alexandria, Minnesota, regarding the type of construction is not the same level as Sartell, Minnesota. And so what is that type of construction and facility that we would be looking at in Valley City? And so I just to give the context back that there's this, just not to be mistaken, is not what we're proposing for Highline Park. So if you're taking pictures and saying this is what the superintendent is giving ideas on, make sure that there's enough other witnesses to dispel that belief. So there are different levels at which construction can be considered, cost savings can be applied. So in the conversations we're having and taking a look at the reasons why we're exploring right now, we really believe that Valley City Public Schools is at a crossroads. As much as we'd like to believe that we don't need to put our attention or focus on these areas, it does hit me when Tom makes those references and our kids say that, Mr. Johnson, I was stuck on that elevator for 30 minutes. And my classmates were walking by as they were getting out of class. And so I can sit here and say, let's change the elevator and let's put $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in changing that elevator. But the hard part about that is okay, what about the sprinkler systems? What about the mechanical systems when they say, Mr. Johnson, it's really hard for us to learn when the temperature is 95 degrees in the art room? And we used to like to believe and say that, tough it out, we survived, we made it through. I'm not sure many of us, when we're going car shopping these days, are saying, I'd like that model without the air conditioning. There's standards of quality and education that I think we need to be expecting and following ourselves. So here's really the pathway. If we take a look at where we've been, do we want to continue on the pathway of where we've been and continue to go down the road of addressing our school facilities with minor renovations? We believe with some of the grant dollars are available to us that we would be able to bring in approximately $10 million. Again, I'm going to reference back to our facility assessment, which is $26 million. So 10 million of that 26 million would allow us to be able to knock off a portion of that. That would mean we would increase the building fund from 12 mils to 20 mils, and we'll show again what that cost reflects in a moment here. That's the maximum right now the Valley City Public Schools and schools across the district, or schools across the state can levy in the building fund. We would take some of the grant dollars, we'd apply CTE education, renovate the Career Tech Center, believing that we would be able to put in about $1 million of our own building fund dollars to be able to receive about approximately $1 million match from the state, not the 10 million we had referenced earlier. Major renovations. So if we went forth and said, hey, we have some major facility needs in our school district, we believe a $15 million referendum would be able to allow us to address the majority of our facility needs. Again, not all of them, but over the next 20-year period would get us in pretty good shape. We can, again, address the office locations. We can address the mechanical systems. We can address the elevator ADA compliance, fire code, some of the aesthetics and modernization, 23 million of that. Again, using a bond referendum with a community vote supporting up to $15 million. The other option, again, is what we're presenting, and that is this the time for us now as a school and as a community of Valley City to take a look at something on a bigger level? Something that would include 412, potential renovations at K3, and I think as people in our community are saying that you need to look bigger. You need to have a bigger picture beyond just that. And Jefferson Elementary was built in 1960. Again, the design of, maybe not to throw our architects under the bus again, but what in the heck were they thinking back in 1960? I'm not sure.
It's groovy.
It was really groovy, this open concept, but I'm not certain. If you haven't been in Jefferson Elementary recently, I encourage you to head up sometime, and we'd love to give you a tour. It's really unique, Ms. Thorson. Would you agree? Pie-shaped classrooms for 15 to 20 elementary students is not necessarily ideal all the time. So we're trying to look at the big picture and saying, what does that include? And so let's get into some of the specifics relative to that. I think that's why a lot of you came. You know, we agree that obviously our facilities need to be addressed. But what is that cost going to be for us as a community in order to be able to accomplish that? If we were to look at those minor renovations, again, believing that we could bring in about $10 million, increasing our building fund from 12 to 20 mils, it would be $40 per year on a $100,000 property. Assessed property. Not the actual value of the house, but the assessed value of your property. So if you're in a $500,000 house, you can do the math, take 500 times 40, and you can figure out what that cost would be to you on an annual basis. We broke down from the last presentation on what that cost would be on average for an acre of land, 40 cents per acre annually on our minor renovations. Broke that down even a little bit further and said $3.33 per month on a $100,000 property. Major renovations, $15 million bond referendum is $106 a year. New campus. So we're again trying to differentiate between what is needed in a 412 building with renovations at Jefferson. So we've given an option, I'll explain that here in a little bit, of a more economical approach at $30 million, $212 per year. You can see the cost per acre and cost per month. A new campus with a $40 million bond referendum. So believing that, again, back to that design, that we'd be able to use the gymnasium for more than just practices and physical education, that you'd have bleachers. Being able to upgrade a performing arts center to have additional seating, to be able to have additional areas for expansion and potentially even future growth in our school district, believing that the idea that if you build it and you provide opportunity and resources, people will be attracted and follow. So the question that the board has come back to and repeatedly asked is it more fiscally responsible for us to take the dollars that are available to us now? And again, the question that was asked back in August at a retreat, do we take the $3 million and invest it into our facilities, upgrade the elevators as such, or do we take those monies and look a little bit bigger and say, what's the long-term impact and effect that we can have on the school district by investing in a new K12 campus? So opportunity costs. When you take a look and you add this together, that we have $30 million in operational savings. And again, to highlight, we believing that $1.5 million could be saved in operational savings by reducing energy cost, maintenance, and staffing, that over a 20-year period, we can have $30 million in operational savings. $26 million, again, in facilities planning, deferred maintenance. $13 million, we like to refer to as other people's money in grant dollars, believing that a sound application has a good chance of being able to pass and be approved at the state level, providing us a lot of resources and funds for career tech education. Combined, $69 million. So I guess ask you guys the question, where will we invest $69 million in the next 20 years? Do we invest those monies into our current facilities? Again, we've referenced what that average age is, 1958, 63 years old. Do we take the $69 million that, without consolidation, will continue to be put into operational, general fund and building fund? We'll address the facilities plan one way or another and have access to a portion of the grants. So is that where the dollars should go? And here's the questions we continue to ask. Where will Valley City Public Schools be in 20 years? 2042. I want to speak to this point, and this was brought up after the presentation on Monday, and I think it's something that's really important that as a school district we address. Believing that operational savings will exceed the amount of money that is necessary to be able to be put into a down payment on a new school. So the idea being that in a worst case scenario, that in the 20-year period, the likelihood of operational savings coming back to the taxpayers is extremely high. While those dollars may not return in year one, at the conclusion of a payment in 20 years, 2042, we're looking at a new facility, payment having been completed, options on the table as far as being able to address other facility needs, and or again, having that ability to add to the savings from an operational standpoint. This is believing, again, remaining flat, that there will be no change in the dollar from 2021 to 2024 or 2042. We know the reality of that is that's not the case. So what will the actual operational savings look like 20 years from now? Believing that there's increases in salaries and benefits, cost of equipment, supplies, and others. This is where it gets fun. So what's our legacy? What's the legacy in Valley City Public Schools? 1881, kitty corner to Valley Service, where the current hack is sitting right now. The original school, K12 School of Valley City Public Schools, was constructed for a cost of $5,000. The building stood for a few years before it was eventually moved off and turned into a hotel. After that, another building was constructed in 1894. There was actually an addition because of enrollment growth in our school district. 4 years later, they added a wing onto that. The cost to construct this was $16,000. Sadly, this building burned on February 1st, 1907 in a fire. In the meantime, 1902, Ritchie 2 was constructed. Mr. Bauer, do you remember Ritchie 2? How many remember or attended a couple of classes in Ritchie 2? There's quite a few hands going up there. I was told a few stories from Monday night. I think cafeteria, there was some food service over in Ritchie 2, as well as some classes in Ritchie 2 as well. Ritchie 1 was constructed and put up in 1907 after the previous building burned to the ground. This was the third school on this site. So Ritchie 1 and Ritchie 2. Anyone? Lincoln Elementary, down by the old mill, by the Open Door Center. Lincoln Elementary was constructed in 1910, stood for a number of years, and was later replaced by which school? Lincoln. The new Lincoln, quite original. The new Lincoln, we'll get to that here in a moment. How about this one? Kids, that's a school you're going to right now. 1919 is when construction began on Valley City High School. Students didn't move into the high school until 1921. Anyone want to take a stab at what the cost of construction was in 1919 to 1921? 5,000, there was 16,000. Ritchie 2 was 25,000. I forgot to mention that.
34,000.
A big whopping $200,000 to construct this building in 1919, 1921. I'm getting all this facts and information from Wes Anderson from the Barnes County Museum, by the way. He's been a great resource for us as we've been pulling this information out. I think this is a great photograph. Probably something that should be hanging on the wall. So here we have the original high school, North Gymnasium. As I'm understanding, there's an entrance on the south side of that. Locker room areas off of both sides. And then Ritchie 2 and Ritchie 1. Ritchie 1 was demolished in 1966, and Ritchie 2 was demolished in 1971. 1972, the junior high wing was completed, and no longer the need for Ritchie 2. We tried to date the age of this picture, and so I may ask some of you guys to name these cars and let us know, but we're thinking the 50s. How about this one? 1956, Washington Elementary. Doesn't look a whole lot different than what it does today, does it? 1984, there was an addition put on the west side of Washington Elementary. How about this one? Jefferson Elementary. How about the development happening in Valley View? I apologize if some of you are rolling your eyes or wondering why we're going through this. I'm a former social studies history teacher, so I kind of enjoy it. You know, our teachers have asked us to give them back access to these exterior doors, but I think we're going to draw the line on the fact that they can't drive their vehicles up to the doors like they did before. I showed a picture earlier of the windows at Jefferson Elementary. Sorry to let you know those are the same windows that were there in this photo in 1960. All right, how about this one? Mr. Bope and the Career Tech Center. This would be Lincoln Elementary. 1968 was opened up, and Lincoln Elementary was in existence for a very short period of time, and 1975, 76 turned in the Career and Tech Center, vocational education. So the question is, what will we pass on to the next generation in Valley City? We've talked about cost savings, we've talked about the priorities, we've talked about the options out there that are available to us. And of course there's a cost that comes along with that. What's the investment that we're going to make with the resources and the funds that we have available to us? Do we put them back? Do we invest them back into the existing facilities we have? And where will that bring us in 20 years? Again, purpose of our presentations, purpose of our exploration, out ahead of any decision regarding any sort of vote of any kind, is to be able to collect feedback and input from you. So we have the original school, 1881, 1894, 1902, 1907, and 1921. What's up for our next generation of students? A lot of individuals that have come before us have made a lot of significant investment in education in our community. In fact, I'd argue that the number of facilities that changed over a 50-year period has far exceeded what's been done in the last 50. So again, representing the school board and honored to be a superintendent in our school district and have this conversation, we are looking as a school district for your input, for your feedback. On Friday, we're going to be presenting and sharing this information with our students in grades 7 through 12. We've had presentations with our staff. We'll continue to be meeting and conversation with our parents and you, our community members, to listen, to hear your ideas, your comment, and your feedback. A community survey will be hitting your mailboxes and emails on October 20th. Each survey that will come out in your mailboxes or your email is going to be unique to you and your household. So if you and your significant other disagree on the future and the feedback, call us at the district office and we'd love to give you another survey code. We won't judge you based on the divide that exists in your household. But it gives a good representation and an opportunity for the board to be able to listen and get your feedback about the future of our school district. That information will be compiled. The deadline is November 1st to get those back in. And again, every mailbox holder, parent of our school district, staff member will receive an email or hard copy survey in the mail. And you'll complete that, fill it out. There's going to be 3 questions as part of that. One of the questions is going to be, do you support a bond referendum? Which of the options, option 1, a $30 million referendum, option 2, a $40 million referendum, or neither, or I need more information, will be an option for you to decide. The last question that will be asked in there is a question relative to debt limit. In Valley City right now, our debt limit and what we can take on in a referendum is 5%. We can't right now go with a referendum anything over $20 million. And so as part of that, if you say, I support option 1 or option 2, your response would be, yes, I would support increasing the debt limit. If you would be opposed to an option 1 or option 2, you would say, no, I don't support the increase of the debt limit. On November 10th, the board will hear this information in a special board meeting and interpret, analyze, break out that information to better understand. Again, the board is in a position to listen to the community and respond accordingly. We want to be, again, very strategic and specific, believing that if the community is opposed to taking a $69 million invested into new facilities and would rather take those dollars and put them into current facilities, they have that opportunity to be able to speak and it'll be represented in the surveys. So a referendum with a response, unfavorable response, would be silly. It'd be a waste of our time as a school district and the waste of the time of the community. So, with that being said, Tom, how am I doing on time? Way over. That's what that look was like. So, Dr. Luke?
Yeah, I've got a question that the state career tech education, that's a match. So if you went for the 10 million, where are you getting, where are you, if you're looking for a total project of 10 million?
Yep, so Yep, so the question was, state career and tech education allows between $500,000 to $10 million in one-to-one matching funds. And so if we were to put an application in for a $10 million grant, the funds for this project would be the match from a local level. There's also something referenced to in-kind. It's the work that's already been put into career and tech education over the last couple of years that would be able to be considered as part of the match for those funds. So again, if we're looking at a minor renovation, I think there's going to be a minimal amount of funds that the district would be able to contribute in for a potential match, believing that Barnes County North, Maple Valley, Litchfield, Marion would have also a potential contribution as part of that. If we were looking at the $10 million, the majority of those dollars, again, are going to come from Valley City Public Schools as part of the referendum project.
That would be money that you have to raise from the community?
No, it'd be part of the referendum. Yes, it'd be the taxpayers. Yep.
So it's actually 5 plus 3 of other people's money.
$3 million is the federal dollars, and if we went for a total of $10 million, we would have $5 million of our own, and $5 million of state money. If we went and put in $10 million of our own money, we could receive $10 million from the state, a one-to-one match of those funds.
I have a question. So the proposed area where the school will be, you possibly answered this, but I wanted to clarify. As the community grows and as needs change down the road, years down the road, is there room in that area for more expansion?
Good question. So the question was about the area that we showed at Highline Park and whether or not we're going to eventually landlock ourselves in to that area. Again, the feedback we've received in the last few days is the potential of being able to put K12 under one roof, and what does that look like even more from an operational savings standpoint, as well as building culture and efficiencies within the school district. And so part of the discovery or investigation right now with our construction consultants is determining square footage and space. Based on the conversations in the last couple of days, we believe that that area is adequate in order to be able to put a K-12 facility where it's at. There would be some other things that would need to be addressed as part of that, such as how Hannah Field is currently being utilized, the practice fields and areas around that as well. But we've looked at that alternative location for career tech education across the street and where the current lime pit is as well. And so the other thing I want to make reference again relative to that, and Mr. Yurnis from News Dakota was here on Monday and was able to highlight that we had an individual in our community that came forward to us in September and offered up a piece of land up at the interstate south of the east interchange. And so it would be south of the jail over across the interstate, the new jail. And Stan Ryan offered 20 to 30 acres for the school to investigate looking at a potential new site for a school of any size, whether that be a K-12 school, a K-3, a 412, whatever else that would be. And so the board right now and the conversation that we're having is to really explore, to look at options. We've had other individuals in our community say that area of farmland, which is directly west of Pioneer Park, on the west side of the ravine, would be another area that would be intriguing relative to its proximity to town. And so I just want to reiterate again that right now our conversations as a school district are taking a look at the potential creation of a one campus. However, at the same point, we don't want to limit ourselves by any means relative to what's possible in our community if we believe, again, that money should be invested in new facilities. And so as we continue going down the road and investigating this, that will be a conversation the board will continue to have, and something that you, again, as stakeholders, I think should have an interest in terms of providing your input and suggestions on a potential location. For me personally, and speak to this, I like the idea because of the current facilities that exist, and having Charlie Brown, having Hannah Field with the track. I should highlight that a second story onto the proposed 412 would allow us to be at the same elevation as Hannah Field because of the slope, so that if you're going for track practice, cross country, or football, you'd be able to walk right from a second story right onto Hannah Field, and so you can share locker room spaces and things such as that. Having the YSC and the tennis courts, again, something that we're not necessarily used to, creates a campus idea. With that, I want to address, and I don't think we spoke to this yet, what happens to our current facilities. And that's also part of the exploration right now, that how can those facilities potentially, if we look at consolidating our buildings and school district, taking advantage of those operational savings, what is the community's wishes with the current facilities that we have? The Career Tech Center, Washington Elementary, the junior senior high, the district office, special education building. And so part of the conversation, again, we're having relative to that is, can those facilities be used by the school district or by the community for any purposes that would be of value? One of the other conversations that came from a discussion with the chamber board. Is about having the Highline Activity Center be a conference or convention center for the purposes of the community. Right now, we're limited in terms of space for wedding receptions or family gatherings, reunions, whatnot. And so is that something that could be opened up and explored? Those are all kind of the conversations and options that we're having right now, believing that there's a lot of good input to be able to be received by a lot of different individuals in our community. So to answer the question, sorry if I was long-winded relative to that, is we believe that there's adequate space. I think we'd have to take a deeper look in terms of what are we trying to fit into this Jefferson block. Other questions? For us as a school district, if we would look at a K12 option under one roof. Unfortunately, I'll just be very frank and honest with you that our survey has already gone to the printer and has hit the press, and so we want the feedback from you. However, at this time, on that survey, the question in terms of a K12 facility will not be there. So that doesn't refrain you from reaching out and providing your comment and feedback to us in any sort of format or fashion. We'll have sources available on social media, website, where you can access contact information for us if we need to have future meetings to learn more whether or not this community says, hey, we really want to take a look at a K-12. And I think that will still show up in the survey. Again, if we have an overwhelming majority of individuals that say, hey, we want to look at option 1 or 2, there's also a comment section that would encourage individuals to say, don't limit yourself there and look at a K-12 option as well. We'll have an idea in terms of what those cost estimates will look like in short fashion. I expect Lee to have those probably by tomorrow. Other questions? I saw some other hands raised up. Hello, Jack.
Yes, would the $40 million bond include interest, and what would be the length of the payback on the bond?
Yeah, 20 years is the bond. That's the maximum amount, length of time school districts are able to bond. And the estimate we have right now is a 2% interest rate. I don't think you're going to find a heck of a lot better interest rate than what we have right now. So there are some programs available through the Bank of North Dakota where school districts have been able to actually get that interest rate down even lower.
What would that amount to over a 20-year span?
Interest?
Yes.
Good question. I'll have to circle back around with you and let you know. Or we can put our business manager on and see if he can come up with it before you take off.
I think that should be included in the proposal, in the question, because that's a part of the cost. The interest is a part of the cost.
One comment that we saw today that came out was the cost of demolition. And so I just to reference, kind of back to your point, Jack, that $30 to $40 million of a bond referendum would be all inclusive. So whether we have demolition costs or whether we have interest or whether or not it's furnishings and other equipment, that's all inclusive on that number. And again, I want to point out, this question was raised the other day, that these are estimates. You don't know what the actual cost will be until you go to a bid. Those numbers could change between now and then. We're in an extremely volatile time period right now, and so maybe those costs in 12 months from now will be less than what they are right now. The challenge that we're running into, again, back to Tom's point that he made earlier, is we have these grant dollars that have an expiration date on them. And so while it'd be nice for us to sit here and say, let's ride this one out and see where the pandemic will lead to us in 2 years, we're not afforded that opportunity. If we wait and allow these grant dollars to come and go, they'll go to somebody else. Other questions?
So as far as the restoring of the Hannah Field, is it something, I mean, I know it's not finished.
Yep.
I don't know how much is left to raise to finish it. Is that worth something to put into this?
Yeah.
Finish the final stages of doing that?
I didn't expect you to ask anything about Hannah Field, James. Mr. Highliner. So we do have a master plan for Hannah Field. As you guys know, we, I think, very successfully completed with the support of our community through donations and building fund dollars. We were able to complete Hannah Field Phase 1 and Hannah Field Phase 2. There is a third phase of that included another equipment facility, putting turf on the field, as well as being able to add a softball field. up at Hannah Field. And so also I want to make sure we point out as well that locker room spaces that are below the bleachers. And so I think your question or comment that you're making is, don't forget about other facility needs that we have across the school district.
Just we're putting it on top of whatever you're already trying to come up with.
And so phase 3, before the pandemic hit, was intended to be, again, something that we would approach from a private donation and sponsorship. And the pandemic really derailed that. And so the board has put that on the back burner. And I think part of these conversations will lead to, if we're looking at particularly a K12 facility, as far as being able to get rid of this, how does that fit relative to future plans for Hannah Field? To answer your question, I think, again, I don't want to misrepresent the board relative to this, but I think the additions or adding to this campus would come through donations or sponsorships. There are some naming rights opportunities as well. Jennifer, I know on Monday you spoke to, and I think it's important to highlight as well, some of the work that's happening right now with economic development and across the county. And if you don't mind, Tom, if you want to maybe hand off the mic. If you need to run, if it's already 9 o'clock, by all means. 1 second, Mr. Leroy, and I'll come back to you.
Well, it's good to see everybody here and fleshing out this opportunity. I've been the Economic Development Director for quite some time now, and we've seen a lot of changes in the community. Most recently here, we've seen John Deere Seeding Group add 50 to 60 people just recently. Eagle Creek is hiring. They're hiring every month. We've got Preventus hiring a number, and that's just our primary sector businesses. Our focus as a development corporation is with the primary sector because that's new wealth that's coming into the state of North Dakota and into the community. When we work with companies, however, once the companies have decided about a facility and they have the basics laid out, what is important to them, not only at a corporate level, but also at an individual level, are two things. And you can prioritize one or the other, but in our minds, they are equally important. And one is housing, and the second one is education. Those two things go hand in glove with the companies. They look at it at the corporate level as well as the individual levels when they are working to hire people, attract people to the community. In recent years, we've had close working relationships with education, but I can see and I really believe that collaboration with our educational partners, this school system, our Career and Technology Center, VCSU, I think will really help shape and drive the economic growth that we can see in the community. And you've already talked about the workforce. Not only are we training up people, but we are also retraining. We're training them up, but then producing a workforce long-term for people. We're laying out career paths for them. And some people may want to, may think that they want to start out with a shorter term type of education, but we're laying out this career path, and that's a critical part of what was mentioned here this evening that Derek mentioned. But they may want to go on and advance their education and go to school for another quarter, another semester, take more certificate programs. But that'll only increase. Our collaboration is only going to increase, and I really see our educational system to help shape the growth of Valley City, Barnes County for a very long time to come. It's exciting. It's an important question for you, and I really appreciate this upfront approach that you've taken. But the community is growing. I just checked today now the population. The census came out, and Valley City from 2010 to 2020 lost 10 people. Barnes County lost about 213 people in that 10-year period of time. Keep in mind, though, that the recession, our Great Recession in 2008 and 2009, was still impacting us in 2010. And for Valley City to say we lost 10 people over that period of time, you don't get over that kind of a recession in a year or two. And so I think the investments that we've been able to make, and when I say we, I mean all of us, not just the Development Corporation, but all of you, all of us, that we've made together really has made a difference. And this is exciting, and I think it's really going to be an important part of, this decision is going to be a really important part of our future. Because again, it's the primary sector, it's housing, and it's education. And when you have that in place, then you will see more retail, more service, more other kinds of things develop that will come along too.
Thanks, Jennifer. Whether we like to believe it or not, we're in a very competitive world. And if you drive up and down I-94 and you look at the facilities at Mapleton, a new school, at Castleton, a new school, Maple Valley has a new school, Barnes County North, Jamestown. And so for us, when we're looking at families that are coming in, housing is a piece of it, but education is also another big part of it. And again, I think a highlight or a point that was made is that facilities don't determine the education that our kids receive, but whether we like it or not, as people drive by and evaluate and look at that, I think it is a reflection whether we like it or not. Mr. Leroot.
As your neighbor to the north, I want the people in the tenants to realize that parking, transportation, moving kids from this building here up to the road deck and back and forth, and what Mr. Bolt referenced in that 7-minute drive, man, we can time them. They really race from up there down here. It's a dangerous situation every hour. It's not just any time frame. It's every hour of the day. And there's going to be a loss at some point. And you think about that when you're sitting here, which one of us wants that loss? And it's going to happen. And when we think about what we're investing and what we're going to do and what we're looking at, that's a drop in the bucket. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was another. Yep, Tracy? Yeah, so the question was what to do with the existing facilities, and that's really part of the study. That's part of the feedback that needs to be explored as far as the Career and Tech Center, Washington, the junior, senior high. Does this area turn into senior housing? Regardless of what it is, those facility costs carried from one person to the next. And so, again, we're looking for that feedback and discussion and suggestions as well, believing that there is potential to be able to access and use, whether it's the college or park and rec or private business.
You mentioned 1,050 students is the population. How can you estimate what that would be in 2042?
Yeah.
Any way to do that?
Yeah, that's really challenging to be able to look out that far, and we're doing our best again to try to determine what the next 5 years will look like. This year our junior class this year has a class of 115. We're bringing in 80 to 85 students, and so we know we're going to take a hit after next year when that senior class graduates, unless we have a big class that comes in. What I can tell you in the last 10 years of being here, that number has been approximately 1,100 to about 1,130. And so we've seen the maintaining of that district enrollment. I'd like to hear the stories of back when I graduated, we had 120 students in my class, and we fit into this building just fine. And then when my son graduated, it was 115, and now they're 85. And so part of the conversation is realizing that the demographics have changed, and the farms have changed as well. There's fewer kids and families and whatnot. I believe, and I believe it wholeheartedly, that there's a lot of positive things that are happening in Valley City, and that if we continue to address things from a community standpoint, that families that are looking and deciding where they're going to live will choose Valley City instead of Castleton. That is one of our big competitors right now, along with Jamestown and the others. So I like to believe, again, if we address the facilities and have continued to have the quality of education we have, that enrollment will continue to maintain what it has for the last 15 years or so. I wish I had a magic crystal ball and could tell you, though, what that would look like in 20 years. Justin?
Has anything been looked, I know you haven't been able to look into this yet, but that facility there, how many students can you use that facility for right now as far as growth?
Yeah, so we're basing that right now about 1150. And so each student being able to be designated a certain amount of square footage. And so we base this on approximately 200,000 square feet. The variable with this is career tech education and how much space that they need for shop areas, for ag classrooms, automotive, and whatnot. And right now that's included as part of that. I'm going to rely upon our experts, again, relative to this, to have an idea with similar projects of what that would look like as we build the scale on a K3. The thing about consolidation and efficiencies is how many duplicated services do you need? Right now, we have 3 different kitchens across the district. If we consolidate to a campus, we have 2 kitchens. If we go to K12, we have 1 kitchen. And so the more you consolidate, the more efficiencies you create. I had conversation with superintendents at Central Cass and Northern Cass today who are of similar size enrollment and asking them, what are the pros and cons with a K12 facility? And both said we would never think otherwise. We would never build separate schools. In fact, Castleton a few years ago studied looking at putting an elementary school out by the interstate and listening to their stakeholders, ultimately decided to put everybody under one roof with approximately 1,100 students. And so I think there's a lot of value and benefit that comes from that, and I think that's part of the reason why we had the feedback that we did from the other night. Other questions, sir?
Here tonight, listening to you talk, you just said it again, they've never separated their schools again. Well, here, we're looking at spending a whole bunch of money, you said it was an extra 250, round that, thousand to put the rest of it together, K-12. Another thing about this town is we're always cramped because of the valley. If there's somebody willing to donate 20 to 30 acres up on the hill, why put our back against the wall? You already want to build something south of that school, but we don't know if we can. Up there you could.
Yep.
I mean, up there you can expand and expand and expand.
Yep.
I don't know why we even consider putting our back against the wall down there.
Yep. Thanks, sir.
Just everything we've always done, the pictures you showed tonight, showed buildings that were too small. Look at the roof on this one. How many times has it been added to over and over and over?
Yep.
You're back to the wall. Well, 20 to 30 acres up by the interstate, that's a lot of room.
There's something nostalgic, and I appreciate your comment and the feedback relative to that. There's something nostalgic, there's something Valley City when you're in the location, when you're seeing the Highline Bridge, the river. But there's something also, I think, from a community standpoint that I just personally believe that when you have your Castletons or your Kindreds or your Fargos that are coming and competing, if you haven't ever been to a Subway or a Pizza Corner on the night of a game, then you need to come and watch it. But if we go to the interstate, I'm afraid that our community is not going to benefit in the same way that we are right now, and we would if we're bringing people through town. And so I appreciate your comments, and I think, again, from a board's perspective, that everything has to be on the table, and being able to answer the question, is this enough square footage in the scenario that we all of a sudden add 500 students to our school district? And if it's not, then that has to be part of the equation, and we need to look at other potential building areas. So thank you. Yes, Russ?
So for the amount you'll save over time, can you reevaluate that to add inflation so we can show everybody a truer cost of how much more we'll actually save? Because we took the original number, multiplied it by 20. So if you add inflation on top of that, we're actually gaining a whole lot more by doing this project. So is there just a way you could illustrate that in the future for everybody?
I think part of the presentation, I hope you understand, again, the effort we're trying to make is to be as open and transparent and honest with all of you. And so part of that is also being very conservative with our numbers, not wanting to inflate them more than what we would potentially predict. But your point is that our cost savings won't look the same as what we're predicting in 2021 as what they will look like in 2042. So to answer your question, we'll make note of it and be able to share that information as well. Other questions? Sharon?
Refresh us as to the timeline related to the grant opportunities, the bond issue, and the building protection, the date you might start and finish.
Yep, okay, so we have a few different grants. We have the state CT grant, and the application deadline is December 1st. We believe that in 2 months we'll find out the results of whether we are successful or unsuccessful with that. You have a couple of years of being able to apply the funds from that grant for a project. So I'm believing 23 would be the deadline to be able to apply a grant up to a matching 10 million. Mr. Van Orny reported ESSER 2 is deadline is 23 September? September of 23. ESSER 3 is September of 24. As far as the community survey and the potential decision beyond that, the board is going to see the results of the survey on November 10th, evaluate the response, other additional comments that may be made at that point. If the board would so choose to call for a referendum after that meeting, I would believe that would be done so relatively soon after, within a month. And if a referendum would be called, it would have to happen after a 64-day period. So hypothetically saying a referendum could be called and a special election held sometime in February or March. As far as construction goes, if a referendum would pass and a project would materialize, and wherever that would be located, I could see a potential beginning of construction happening by the time you bid and everything else, part of the process, then it would be in the fall of 22. Is that true, Lee?
To start construction.
To start construction, a groundbreaking. I'm following what Mandan did. Mandan did a referendum in April, and their groundbreaking was in September, and they're anticipating moving in their school in 23, fall of 23. So for us, if we were to start construction and break ground in the fall of 22, hypothetically, we would see that a new school with students attending would be the fall of 24. Unless we really put pressure on them and say, you need to get it done by the fall of 23.
I think you'd have to assume, 14 to 16 months.
Okay. Other questions? It's getting warm in here. Is it just me? I see fans blowing. Sir?
How many roof heights on this building?
Good question. I don't know. I could answer.
One of your complaints about this building is
Yep.
all the roof heights. To me, it looks like a lot on there too.
You know what the designers of facilities way back when is they thought it was a good idea to put flat roofs on North Dakota buildings. And what I've heard in recent days is they don't design buildings with flat roofs anymore because it leads to water issues in schools. And so, again, these are concept ideas and plans, and we would trust our architects, construction managers to be able to design a facility that we're not going to run into the same issues. Good question or good comment. Okay?
That's just a comment about future enrollment. A lot of the comments are going about families driving by or moving to towns. I wonder if we took really good care of our kids and let them be invested in education along with the rest of the community thriving. If they're not our best customers, the future families in Valley City.
Absolutely. We have a great partnership with Valley City State, and we have a lot of students that have that opportunity to be able to transition right from the high school to Valley City State, and we like to believe, again, that there's a lot of value in just being able to maintain and grow your family right here in Valley City. Maybe there's some incentives that we can provide for families to be able to have more kids as well. It could increase enrollment and population. Any ideas? Yes?
So would this potentially benefit and possibly decrease the amount of kids that I watch getting on buses daily going to Barnes County North and Maple Valley?
Well, one of the individuals who drives those buses and takes our kids out of town, Marshall, is right back here. I've always threatened Marshall, and one of his board members is here too. I've threatened to slash his tires, and so if that happens, it'd be part of it. Sometimes it's a tough question to answer. There's some things in education that we just can't provide, and credit to Mike in Barnes County North. I had the opportunity to be able to teach and be a principal at Wimbledon in 2008, 2009, and we had extremely low class sizes and a smaller school. And so we'll never be able to compete with that at Maple Valley, Litchfield Marion, Barnes County North. And so again, I stand 100% supportive of our teachers and the work that they do and the education opportunities that we provide. And There'll be some highlights of that on our survey that we're proud of in Valley City Public Schools, and we'd always like to believe that whether it's those families that are homeschool educating or those students that are choosing to go out of district for education, that they would give us the opportunity to be able to provide a great education for their children. So I'd like to say yes, but the reality of it is it's a challenging and difficult question to ask with a lot of different variables and factors. Yeah.
I think people just need to remember when we're talking about location, part of the reason why this area has been a top is remember that you've got tennis field there, you've got the youth sports complex there, you've got the tennis courts there, you've got Charlie Brown Field. I mean, it's a lot more, you know, if we do up on the interstate, now we're all over the place again, you know. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
I know you talked about that before, but then stuff on it, but remember that.
Yeah. I asked with some of the early conceptual drawings that I could have the superintendent's office looking over Charlie Brown as well as seeing the Highline Bridge, but instead they put it here looking over the wastewater pond. So you can see you can see the clout that I carry in some of these designs, but in truth, again, I've been in Valley City 6 years, and it's just been absolutely a privilege to be here and to raise my family and have my 4 kids in the school district, and what a wonderful community and opportunities that we have ahead of us in education, in our community, and across the county. And I'm really excited about the future of Valley City and what's happening, and I really believe there's much opportunity. And schools or districts of our size and communities sometimes get stuck in this slow spiraling death, and I just can't believe that that's representative of Valley City. I saw another hand go up. Denise?
I wanted to add to what she was saying about the location. I look at how many of our kids walk, ride bikes to school every day. If you were to go on the other side of the interstate, you're looking at transportation for your kids. We have a lot of our students go to Evers, go to Dairy Queen, and they walk there for lunch, they drive there. They're driving all over then if we're that much further away from downtown.
Thank you. I think the guys shut off any sort of air conditioning to maybe send a hint. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sweating quite profusely. We'll take a couple more questions and wrap up. I'd like to offer the mic to our board president a second to re-encourage some of the things that have been said. I saw a question or a hand go up, and so let's take 2 more questions.
If building on that site, does it require mitigation to prevent shifting and so forth because of the slope?
What we found out from this site, it was an old rock quarry, and so that was from the soil studies that we've done and completed in 2018, and I'd like to believe very similarly that would be similar type of soil grounds, but any sort of further conversation or exploration of that, we'd have to make sure that we went in there and took really a deep evaluation, no pun intended on that, of the soils. And what we do know is we've already soil studied this, and that significant amounts of fill that was put into there would have to be removed before you would construct anything in that location. Good question. Any last questions? Highlight. Mr. Robin.
Just a comment about alternative locations to this. When you're talking about the cost, if you think about it on the other side of the Green, west of Pioneer Park, or putting it in the interstate, you also have to think about sewer, water, electricity, all of those things that cost the county and the city huge amounts of money to take those miles of pipe and roads and all the stuff that's got to go with that to take it out there. Not even talking about response times for the fire department and what kind of criteria that's going to create law enforcement, those kinds of things, and all of that. And comments about, I was at a governor's event yesterday, and they talked a lot about where people want to live. And it used to be, and it still is somewhat, if you're a teacher or you're a nurse, you have to go to the job where the job is. That's not going to you. But just about any of this pandemic of COVID has done anything. It's opened up industry to let people decide where they want to live and then pick the job they want to do wherever it might be in the world. And so if we can create the community that brings people in, that they want to live here, very efficient use of that land. All of the plumbing, all of the sewer, everything is already there. So it's just a matter of tapping in.
Senator Wabama, I wasn't going to put you on the spot from a legislative perspective, but since you interjected and offered, we've heard there's a possibility of a special session coming up, and the governor has come out with some concepts and ideas relative to career and tech education, and so maybe there's a potential that even additional resources beyond the 10 million may be applied and could benefit our school district as well. But again, no pressure to our local representatives at all. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike, for being here and serving our.
Hey, Josh, can you go back to the crossroads slide? I think there's something that we might have not maybe glossed over, but we should reiterate when it talked about the minor major right there. So I think the true cost, it might be missed on the minor and major innovations. If we do the third option, we'll also have the cost savings in there. And if you don't have that, you have to add that back into the minor and major innovations total cost, because you'll have that. This will have to incur those costs. So instead of $10 million on the minor, over 20 years it'll actually cost $40 million. And instead of doing the $23 million, it's still going to cost us $53 million as a district. I think that's an important thing to think about. You know, let's do the 10 million or the 23 million. It seems a lot cheaper. You still have to add in those extra operational costs if we don't consolidate some of the buildings in the district. I think that's something that I know as a board member, I initially was a little bit hesitant on the whole thing, but once you start adding in the true costs of what the district can save over the long term, it becomes a lot more of a positive outcome, I think. And I hope you guys, think the same thing going forward.
Thank you. Tom, will you run the mic up here to Ryan so he can wrap up? I saw one more hand up, Brent, and I'm gonna go against what I said earlier and let you have the last comment since you showed up to 2 meetings.
Okay, so with regard to what his statement was of the infrastructure to build a new school off property, you also have to look at the fact that you're completely opening up a new environment for housing.
Yep.
You're going to put houses all the way around the school if you're moving it north or south or east or west, other than where it's at right now.
Yep.
So the infrastructure that's required for the school is also going to benefit that neighborhood.
Yep. Thank you. There were some discussions on Facebook, and again, everything you read on Facebook again is factual and accurate, correct? But in all seriousness, what this has led to, as Jennifer represented the last couple of days, is just indicative of what we've had with the response the last couple of days with the number of people that have shown up that are invested and care about what we're talking about in Valley City. So I encourage you to have conversation, respectful conversation about the future of Valley City Public Schools and our school facilities. I think it's extremely healthy, and at the end of the day, we are in a situation where it's a win-win-win for everybody. And so please don't hesitate to reach out and communicate and contact. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to wrap us up here this evening with our board president, Ryan Mathias.
Is that on? I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and being ones that actually want to get informed. Reading through some social media things today and stuff, there's a lot of people and a lot of opinions out there, but not a lot of information yet. So please go out and inform people, talk to people, let those coffee groups know just what the actual facts are and everything. But next week, when these surveys come out, in your mailbox, please, please, please don't just throw them away. We need your feedback and your information to make a decision on how you want us to spend your money. Because that's what it is. It's your money, it's my money, it's all taxpayer dollars. And we want to know how you guys want us to spend that money. What's going to be the most fiscally responsible way to do it? So please, when you get the surveys in the mail, most of the time that it's junk mail and it goes in the garbage, please open it up and return it quickly, because we need it back so that we can make a decision on the 10th of November. So please, thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and make sure you return those surveys.
Comments, there's comment cards out front. We have a box. Let's outdo what happened Monday night. We had 2 comment cards submitted in the box, so fill those out. 4 comments on the QR code. We can do better. We were here 40 minutes longer than Monday night. So please, again, if we're not emphasizing again enough, the feedback is critical, important. We have people in positions that are interested in listening to you and what you have to say. So thank you very much for being here, and have a good rest of the night.